Okay, so one of the things we're also working is not just square roots, but we're also working on simplifying radicals. So this isn't going to come up with so much an answer. For example, like the square root of 25 equals plus or minus 5. We're not going to get an exact answer like this, but we are going to be able to take an imperfect square root and simplify it to its simplest form. So for example, if we have 6 square root of 12, this is basically saying it's asking you to multiply 6 times the square root of 12. Then we're taking the number 12 within the square root, and we can set up our t-chart, and we can find the multiples of 12. Well, we know that 1 times 12 is 12, but that doesn't really help us, so we move on. 2 times 6 is 12, and we also know that 3 times 4 is 12. These are our multiples of 12. So now we're looking for a number that we know is a perfect square root, meaning, for example, like the square root of 25, the perfect square root, the answer is 5. So we're looking for a number that is a perfect square root, and the only number I see that is a perfect square root is 4. So we're going to go ahead and take these multiples and plug them into our problem. So instead of 12, we're going to say 6 times the square root of 4 times 3. Then we're going to break it up even more. 6 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. Now we know the square root of 4 plus or minus 2, right? So we're going to cross this out. We're going to say 6 times 2 times square root of 3. Now, 6 times 2 is 12 times the square root of 3. We cannot simplify the square root of 3 any more than it already is, and we cannot simplify 12 any more than it already is. So our final answer is going to be 12 square root 3. Sometimes we'll get a problem like this. 4 square root of 100. Well, we can definitely set up our t-chart and find the multiples of 100. 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25, 5 and 20. So if I stop there and I notice that 25 is a perfect square root, but I also need to look at the big picture and notice the number under here sometimes is a perfect square root. So for example, is there a number that could be squared that would equal 100? Yes, there is. That answer is 10. So without having to do so much work, I didn't even really have to do this t-chart if I had noticed that 100 is a perfect square root. So the only step this would be is to notice that the square root of 100 equals 10, and 4 times 10 equals 40, so 40 would be our answer. So this is kind of a tricky one, but it's also really easy if you keep an eye on the original number. The other thing is sometimes you'll find something like this, 6 square root of 30. Now there's lots of different multiples for 30, that's not the problem at all. But we're going to find that none of our multiples actually end up being perfect square roots. 30, 15, 10, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. None of these end up being perfect square roots. So there's nothing I can do more to simplify 6 square root 30. So if it asks you a question like this, it is a trick question because this would be the simplest form.